Over the weekend, Bryan Johnson, with his Extreme Longevity Project and known for the ideology of don't die, was facilitated a 5-MeO DMT experience in Canada. And as the co-executive directors of the Sacred Synthesis, which is a 5-MeO and Psilomethoxin church, we felt it's imperative to lend perspective to that conversation. So I'm joined here by Cynthia Kremblett. My name is Benjamin Moore, and we're going to bring you some information that can be relevant to this whole hubbub that's going on right now in the psychedelic world. So,
Yeah. So first and foremost, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that 5-MeO-DMT is known as the God molecule. Our friend Martin Ball has coined it that, and it is even referenced by Brian after he went through his experience. And it is definitely I don't want to say just an experience, but it is a compound that can create radical shifts and reality and in your experience of reality, as well as some strong physiological impacts, which it seems like um, his being Brian's idea of working with 5-MeO-DMT was in regards to removing brain inflammation. So I'd like to talk about, Ben, you've been a Buffon medicine facilitator with 5-MeO-DMT for quite a long time. So
okay.
would love to hear your perspective on the way in which Brian received the 5-MeO-DMT, how it was facilitated from your perspective, and then we'll kind of get into why we think this is so important to be talking about and why I personally want to celebrate him doing this, one, for himself, but also two, in a very public way.
Oh yeah, thank you for that segue. And yeah, definitely like to acknowledge the courage that it takes to work with this compound in especially a deep transformational way. When we approach 5-MeO DMT with the intention of going all the way, as we call it, or sometimes in the DMT world, you call it like beyond the veil. Uh, it's an element of it is dying. Essentially, your conscious awareness is going to fully go to sleep, and you're able to connect with oneness. And it takes a lot of courage. So I want to say to you, Brian, wow, thank you for showing the world that this is something that you can do and that you can come back from. And the words that you use afterwards, where you talked about pure consciousness, and there's nothing there except that. And I think that's really the essence that we're looking for in a lot of these experiences. Is we have a lot of stories that we bring to life with our meanings and all these other artifacts, but beyond all of that is a state of pure consciousness, which some would call bliss. And so, yeah, I just want to first to give you a shout out in that way, and then talk a little about the approach. And so, what I understand was there was a combination of intramuscular 5-MeO along with a vaporized version of 5-MeO. So, which from my understanding is going to create scaffolding, right? The injection is going to be a slow absorption, longer curve. So it's going to create scaffolding. And it's akin sort of to our approach with using a nasal spray as a delivery method right into the bloodstream, and then using a vaporization method to sort of titrate the dose up. What I've read is you've taken it was 27 milligrams, which is, it's a big dose. So kudos to you on that. And so I really want to sort of bring some light to deep dive versus a shallow meditative experience. And so here at the church, we work with and recommend a middle dose, as it were. So, how we dose our experiences and our meditations, we take people on a middle flight, so they're able to be in an expanded awareness, but also still be embodied, and that allows one to be sort of in an extended experience. So, yeah, there's many different ways, of course, to approach this compound, and yeah, so how that pans out is all up to the facilitator and the participant, and how they collaborate on their individual experience.
Right, and we weren't there, obviously, for the personal conversations. We weren't there for the ceremony, so we're just basing this on our perspective and kind of coming in from what may have happened. One of the things that I thought was worth mentioning beyond the experience of of working with the 5-MeO was the coming back afterwards. And if you're someone who is not familiar with this compound, you've not worked with psychedelics in any way, as even if you have, this one is very unique. There's a lot of pieces that are still being reassembled when you go through what is called like an ego death or an ego eradication or connecting with unity consciousness, where you kind of reset your entire system, almost like a computer being rebooted. And um, if he had said that at the end, he's like, I can't remember the words exactly, but he was still putting his world back together. So something to think about is if you decide to work with this compound, not everything's going to make necessarily sense right away. And that's kind of the point, is to rewire, to rework the perspective on life, rewire the ways in which you want to approach your life. Or what I think is most important beyond connecting with unity consciousness, with like the connectedness of all that we all come from, is the somatic releases. This is a very somatic, clearing the physical body, clearing the energetic body of tensions and stressors. And everyone's read the book, The Body Keeps Score. This is like the sacrament, the gift from divine that is for that, so that your body can release the things that it's been holding on to for so long. So I'm really excited beyond him working with 5-MeO-DMT and bringing this awareness to the world. I'm excited to see, like, as he sits within himself from this experience, what comes forward and what realizations or higher levels of connection he has with self, and hopefully we'll share that with the community at large, because it's not just like, bam, had the experience, that's all that there is. What do
Yeah.
you think about that, Ben?
No, totally, and I appreciate that perspective, and it sort of lends to a greater conversation on, like, what is the intention? And with some of these different approaches, I know obviously we're, speaking from the spiritual aspect, we wanna connect to, these divine concepts and expand beyond the human form. However, we are still living in this vehicle, this suit of water and meat and bone and all these different elements that are within us that we have to keep alive and we have to take really good care of. And one thing that I've learned so much about in the 5-MeO space is the importance of caring for this body. The concepts that were targeting here, that Bryan sort of is targeting, which is living as long as possible and also being as healthy as possible, is complemented by this medicine specifically. And I think what happens is we gain a perspective of the self is number one, not to ignore everyone else, but that it's okay not to serve in sacrifice of your own existence. That if you serve yourself, if you take care and love yourself, then you can pour more into the things that you're creating, the people that you love, the mission that you're on. I think that's a vital perspective that we often miss, especially in some of these quote unquote spiritual experiences, because without the body, where there's no story, there's just the all, which is everything, which you can experience in the 5-MeO space. But we are distilled from that, like a fractal of that. So, can we create an efficiency in the body that allows us to carry on our mission, to carry on our story for as long as possible, and also have a pleasurable experience? And so, uh, that sort of leads me into these alleyways that I had when I was younger, and started to fear death. And I can remember even before my army time that I had these concepts of like, oh my god, like I'm gonna die. Like it would sometimes spin me out, and so I'd go on these different paths of like exploring who was talking about death. And there was people that I consumed when I was younger. One I can remember in the front of my head, named Aubrey de Grey, who was approaching death like a disease. Like this, it's obviously a disease because just like anything else, it's sort of eating away at us. And so then there's obviously different elements of that. And my belief is all these different plants and animals have been put here on earth to work in symbiosis together to increase the quality of our experience, perhaps the duration of our life. And when we can find and discover these and actually integrate them into our story, our experience, life can get better, it can improve, whether it's pain, whether it's connection, whether it's stress. All these different aspects of nature show up for us to give us those opportunities.
Mm. Yeah, from my experience, looking at what Brian's mission seems to be is, I don't want to use, I have to use this kind of being the person who's laying the groundwork for all of these different ways to stitch different approaches together to expand our longevity, or potentially lead to immortality in our current physical bodies, rather than potentially death and reincarnation or whatever you might believe in. I think it's a fascinating thought for him, whose goal is to increase longevity and potentially to never die, to go into an experience that is kind of like a death, to
Sure,
die before you die. And that's why I'm so curious about what's going to unfold for him in the future,
that's right.
since going into this unity consciousness, which I want to talk to you, Ben, about the dosing, right?
Yeah,
So you've been a medicine man and a ceremonialist with this beautiful sacrament for quite a long time. And I'm curious what your perspective is on the amount of dosing that he had in his experience, and
sure.
how you approach it and we approach it differently in our private ceremonies.
Sure, yeah, thank you for that. So when it comes to the perspective of dosing, the only way I can understand the reason that they approached the dosing that they did, and to give an intramuscular first, is to lower stress, lower resistance, and create more openness, which what typically will allow the participant to go further without having a very powerful somatic release. And obviously, the dosing was very high. So typically, if I'm going to work with synthetic 5-MeO, like 12 to 14 milligrams is all that's needed to get someone all the way.
Hmm.
And sometimes we'll titrate that dosing up, and then obviously I'm commenting on just ceremonial doses where we're going to sit, and the intention is to go all the way, and have a
Can you just share what all the way means?
all the yeah, all the way is a connection to God consciousness, to pure bliss,
That pure reset,
to
right? Where
pure
there's
yeah.
where there's
There's nothing else.
no nothing there, meaning you're in, say you're just the room you're in right now, everybody, if you're watching this, like just scan the room you're in, that dissolves away and you go into what we're calling unity within the all,
With unity
all,
consciousness.
unity consciousness, all these different words. Ben saying all the way where your body and your ego dissolves and you're left with just this sensation of the all. And it's kind of a hard thing to
Conceptualize,
conceptualize
without doubt.
until it's been experienced. And Brian even said, like, people can get here for meditation, Kundalini activations, other things can bring you to the state. Probably when you're born, when you have a near-death experience, potentially when giving birth, and more than likely when dying, is when these big dumps of these molecules that are endogenous to us are creating that type of all-encompassing connected state, right, Ben?
Yep, absolutely. And I'll just comment a little on the perspective of using a molecule or a substance, or in our case, as we um, coin it, a sacrament, to access those states. And I have many friends who are, um, let's say, on the fringe. They haven't said yes to many approaches, but have these opinions that, why aren't you using meditation, or why aren't you using, other like breath work to get there, you know? And I'll say, because this works. And the key here is to accept that nature has given us these solutions, and they allow us to access these states that will help us to create a perspective that we can actually travel toward. And I think it's very important, is why if you spend time in a meditation retreat, or spend even extended time in different meditations, because you're practicing that experience, you create spaciousness in consciousness, and then the body and the experience after, when you get back and integrate into society, you have padding or cushioning. Well, these experiences with these compounds can give you the same spaciousness, same padding, same experience that allows you to have more spaciousness in consciousness and do more in your life. And, insofar as that it really resets much of your physiological system. And I know we talk a lot about spirit and a lot about going into these other realms in consciousness, but there's so much going on in the physiology as well. So our body, our skin, our bones, our smooth muscle, our eyes, like most of the cells in our body have 5-HT1A receptors, or so receptors that actually can receive 5-MeO-DMT, and it's all over us. So this is why it's such a somatic medicine. And there's right now, if you go online and look up, psychedelics and these different compounds, right now the big push is for non hallucinogenic psychedelics, which I don't know, they're calling it something else now, but the truth here is that 5-MeO-DMT in itself isn't really hallucinogenic. So hallucinogenic means it's going to create artifacts or bring forward visions that aren't real, that aren't here in the 3D world. And 5-MeO-DMT is some more, we'll call it like an annihilator. It annihilates your perspective on your story and this, and allows you to go to a state of oneness. And because of that, it's doing that not just in consciousness, but it's doing that in all of your body. So all of your cells are receiving that medicine and going into a state of unity, which interestingly enough brings your body back into unity where you perhaps were when you were born, where you were, where your default state should be. But obviously experiences change us, how we hold information, how we hold stress and trauma. So when we can reset that out, it gives us the ability to be in baseline, in comfort, and kind of go in the 3D, navigate three-dimensionally. So Bryan Johnson's live stream of his 5-MeO experience is very timely, because right now in the Senate, there's a bill, Senate Bill 4031, which expands research into these various psychedelic compounds, 5-MeO-DMT being one of them. And the hope is to increase access so veterans have actual solutions that are something that works. And so call your senator, check that out, and help us to pass this bill and move it along.
And beyond that, I think it's really important to talk about the sacred synthesis and our mission. And our mission really is to provide education, community support, and access to sacraments like our 5-MeO-DMT, which comes in the Jaguar Light Wand, which is a vaporization device, and our Unity Mist. Both of these are low 5 approaches, and our beloved Psilomethoxin, which is 5-MeO doped mushrooms. And what we do here is help people connect with their higher selves, their clearer self, removing the ego identity that is actually harmful ego, not the helpful ego, the ego that we stepped into to serve our life's purpose that comes from something higher than ourselves, in a low dose format. And I would love for you, Ben, to share like why we do low dose, kind of briefly, what are the benefits and the way in which we step into this approach in a public, virtual landscape, virtual church that we are most of the ways, and when people can join us, because we have some upcoming ceremonies.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, in contrast to what we've been speaking about today, where there was this massive deep dive experience, we at the church, we facilitate and recommend I say like middle dose or low dose approach. So, in our ceremonies, the way we facilitate experiences is like sort of a low and slow. We're creating scaffolding and then being in an expanded state. And the devices that Cynthia was mentioning, the light wand, is an amazing device to titrate the dosing up to where you feel comfortable and also are able to move some somatic stress out of the body while staying conscious. And the Unity Mist, or the nasal spray that we also have, sort of helps to create scaffolding. So I would, in this conversation we've had, I would say the nasal spray is akin to the intramuscular injection, where it's a direct to the bloodstream that's not going through the digestive system. But it's a less penetrating method, where it just goes into the nasal cavity, and it creates some scaffolding, so it can kind of get you up into the middle plane, and then by which you can stay there and be in a state of meditation and be in a state of somatic processing, and really a microdose, and then you can titrate up from there using the light wand. And there's so many different aspects of dosing when it comes to these specific compounds. And in my experience, I've worked with quite a few people since 2020 in different dosing strategies and different ceremonial experiences, single and group, etc. And so through those experiences, really I really saw what was useful and what would last more in people. And of course, transformational doses are very transformational, right? They can really shift the direction of your travel rapidly. However, there's quite a refractory period with this, right? So there's a lot of recovery that happens and a lot of integration that's necessary. So with lighter doses, you can actually steer actively in the path of your choosing. And this is why we have a 30-day protocol in the church, and we have other educational content that can help you steer your path and where you desire to go without needing to go get rescue swimmer help to navigate where you're going. You can actually slowly navigate through these experiences and find what is feeling best for you. So we have, of course, virtual ceremonies that we offer once a month. And our next ceremony that's upcoming is March 29th, and you can join in with that. We would love to have you. It's at low-5.com/Jaguar, and you can register there. And then if you're a member of the church, if you're a premium member, you can catch all the replays, all of our ceremonies. We have quite a few, dating all the way back to June of last year, and so much other content that we have available to you on our school community page, which is at school.com/the sacred synthesis. And we'd love to have you there in the conversation and just fold into the expansion as we're riding this wave together.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. Yeah, so love to have you all to join us, come into our community, see what we're all about. We really believe that each of us are our own individual healers, and we're all just providing some support and hand holding for each other along the way. And yeah, I again just want to throw a thank you back to Bryan Johnson for bringing even more awareness to the beauty of this compound 5-MeO-DMT. And I think something else that might be worth noting, I'm just thinking of now, Ben, is in regards to 5-MeO and a study being done with the FDA around 5-MeO-DMT, because there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on the benefits of these compounds. So, Brian's goals are certainly in alignment with some other research that's going on out there, and hopes, with this bill in the Senate, maybe it will, be passed through Congress and being able to enable our veterans to find some greater levels of relief and comfort and hopefully connection to divinity.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And really appreciate you jumping on here and having a conversation with me about this and us bringing to light some of our perspectives. And thank you to Brian for taking the dive and opening a space for us to have this talk.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, everybody. You can connect with us at thesacredsynthesis.com. That's where our school community is hyperlinked, and you can find so much more information. Until next time, love you all.